It's important for a lot of our students to realize that local government and specifically state government affects them, and so that they can meet some of the people that make the decisions that affect them directly.
A lot of questioners for you all here today, and we appreciate your opening yourselves to the questions from our audience. And if you would, as our first questioner, if you would identify yourself, your class, and pose your question, we'd appreciate it.
My name is Jennifer Krupa, and I'm a sophomore.
Hi, Jennifer.
My question is, what motivated you to become involved in government?
Senator Frantz, let's start with you since we started at both ends before.
Fair enough. Great question, Jennifer, and thank you for having the courage to come up and ask that question. The reason that I became involved is that it's, in my judgment, a high form of public service. I think we all, as Americans, as residents of this wonderful state of Connecticut, we, at some point in our lives, need to give back because we were given so much as we were growing up, not only by our parents, but our communities, our schools, our churches, etc., synagogues and all that. They've given us so much. And so I've always had this passion for giving back. Prior to running for public office, I was very involved with economic development at the state level and then Bradley International Airport for about 7 or 8 years and the Connecticut Development Authority for about 15 years. And was, in fact, trying to avoid public office because it's very, very time consuming. I didn't feel there was going to be much of a balance in my life. But at one point, I did take a look at the fiscal numbers of the state of Connecticut, and I recognized how bad they looked and how Connecticut had gone from #1 in so many categories to mediocre to the worst in some categories. And I felt if I don't do something about this, then I can never complain about the state of Connecticut, the direction it's going in. Then an opening occurred. My predecessor, Senator Bill Nickerson, decided to retire 5.5 years ago, and that's when the opportunity to run for this came open, and I did so. So it's public service at the end of the day. It's us trying to make a better situation for all of you and your kids when it comes to be.
Representative Fox, what's your?
Sure. I've always been aware of public service. I grew up in a family that was very committed to being involved in local activities, whether it be politics, whether it be community, various community offices. And so I started off by going to the local Board of Representatives. So I was a member of Stamford Board of Reps. I then from there moved on to the Board of Finance, which had other issues. It was a citywide position here in Stamford. And then I got into the state legislature, and I've been there now for 8 or 9 years, I guess. And one of the things I think what I find is that you do really have the ability to help people and have an impact on people's lives. You don't always succeed in everything you want to do, but there are definitely moments, and as you gain experience and you learn how the system works and how you get bills through, as we talked about earlier, you become better at it and you can actually help more people. So it's something that I find very rewarding. It's something I've enjoyed doing.
When you first started on the local level here in Stamford, had you thoughts of going to the state?
I mean, I can't say that I had a laid out plan as far as what I was going to do, and if I did, probably things have changed at times. I mean, when I was in the got on the Board of Representatives, my state rep was Maura Lyons, who was also the Speaker of the House at the time, and she had been serving there for a period of time and with great distinction. And so I didn't know what that would open up or anything like that. It wasn't really something that I planned. But as the opportunities developed, I mean, I think one of the things is if you're involved and if you're focusing on the job that you have at the time, other opportunities will arise. And if you just look at it that way, you can find that you can do things that are worthwhile.
Senator Leone, you are one who went from one house over to the other along the way. How did you get started, and what got you going in either house, and why did you decide to shift?
I had sort of an interesting way of getting to where I'm at now. When I finished high school, much like some of you folks were about to do, my options, I wasn't really looking towards college at the time, so I joined the service. I served in the U.S. Air Force for 6 years. And when I came back to Stamford, I went out like everybody else, looking for a job and trying to get ready to create a career in the future and possibly a family, which is exactly what I did. And I started working for one of the Fortune 500 companies locally. But then eventually I realized I wanted to do more than just have a career. And I started to get involved locally to see what was going on in my hometown in Stamford. And instead of complaining, because we all sometimes complain about what's going on and I don't like how things are happening, you know, you don't have a right to complain if you don't get involved. So I kind of took that to heart, and I started working with some of the local folks and got to know Jerry and eventually got to know Scott. And that's how I started getting involved into the local politics. But it was really a fortuitous moment. My predecessor in the House, Ann McDonald, she was serving for over 10 years in the legislature, but she fell ill. And so she had to step down, and that created a vacuum. And it was a good opportunity of being at the right place at the right time. In the sense what Jerry just said, if you work hard and put yourself in a position to play, when an opportunity presents itself, you can then jump in, and that's exactly what I did. I jumped into the position, worked very hard to run for an open seat. It was a very tight, contested race. I only won by a few points, percentage-wise. And from there, I was able to be in the House of Representatives for a solid 8 years. And then when the opening for the Senate came up, it was the same sort of thing. My predecessor, Andrew McDonald, actually was Ann McDonald's son, he got promoted to work in the governor's administration. So that created another vacuum. Same situation, being at the right place at the right time, having had the skills to say that I could do the job, and I was able to run another race that was contested, and I was fortunate enough to win. And I've been there ever since. So bottom line, just working towards what it is you want to do, putting yourself in a position to play, and when the opportunity presents itself, you can really take advantage of it.
What we did is we targeted a few classes. We targeted a civics class and an AP government class. These are students that are in the middle of really learning about government, having an idea of what it entails and how it affects them.
My question to you guys is, what do you believe the biggest issues are in Connecticut? How would you solve them, and what are your plans for 2014?
Well, I'll mention two, but they're related: budget and jobs. They're the biggest economic driver of the state, and our job is to make sure that we improve both scenarios.
The business friendliness or lack thereof of the state of Connecticut, I think, is something that we need to work on. The business environment is crucial for creating jobs for all of you and for every other person that's capable of working in the state of Connecticut. And we're laser focused on that to make it happen by reducing regulations.
Our students are able to see how production occurs. Our students are able to ask questions that they can get answers to that really affect them. So this was the luxury of having state representatives here, as opposed to simply because many of our students in general we take the look at national politics. We take a look at Fox News and MSNBC and we see those things, but oftentimes, the state and local governments are kind of left behind. So what the students see are the national issues, and what really affects them many times are these local issues, and our representatives and senators were able to address those.